Hello guys and welcome to some Forza Motorsport racing. It has been quite a while before I got back into Forza Motorsport because I've been busy with other things and other simulators, more realistic stuff. But now after the update I'm back checking out the Nascar cars. This is my first ever race trying out the Chevrolet Nascar car. I just bought it. So I didn't have time to qualify because I spent all the time dialing in the setup for the car and it was a bit of work, but right now it's a mess. Everyone is crashing into each other and I was sandwiched between two cars right at the start of the race. Luckily I don't have any penalties and I'm going to try to keep it as clean as possible for the rest of the race. Unlike many people around me who seem trying to be gaining penalties or just trying to have contact with each other. Because I've been switching between a few different simulators, I've also decided to change a little bit the force feedback settings for a more realistic handling and something that made me feel more connected to the car. So right now the settings that I'm using are a bit different than what I used to share here. And after this overtake I'm already in the top 3 from almost last place, just in the first lap of this race. And now I'm having to fight a bit more for the position. This guy seems to be driving a bit better than the other guys behind. And at the same time I'm still getting used because it's my first time driving this car. And you'll notice that my first few laps in this race are going to be a bit subpar and not at my best because I'm still learning the car and getting used to driving this car on this track. But after a while, closer to the end, I'll start doing better laps and pushing a bit more. Right now I still have some lockups and some instability with the car. Sometimes I overcommit on some corners or I take too much curb and lose too much grip. And later on I'll be driving a bit more cleaner and a bit more consistently. I think there was contact and one of the guys, either P1 or P2, just got off track and has fallen behind, so right now I'm in P2. So in the first lap I went from almost last to P2 and now the only faster guy I have in front of me is in P1. One of the things that I'm thinking about the strategy for this race is just to keep the hard tires the whole race and I'm not even going to pit. Because I don't use any driving, it's mainly I don't use any ABS or traction control, because here in Forza Motorsport you don't have the traction control or ABS from the onboard electronics, from the technologies from the cars like you have in real life GT3s or LMP cars. You only have traction control and ABS from the game itself, and usually I don't really enjoy using those because they take away a little bit of the feeling of real driving, so I tend to turn those off and to try to challenge myself to be able to control the cars without using those helps, and therefore I will have a little bit of struggle. When my tires get very worn out, the car will slide a bit more on the rear tires and sometimes I will lock up the front tires. But that is part of driving, and part of the driving technique is overcoming those moments and overcoming those things, being able to avoid doing those mistakes. Right now my pace is far from the best and the guy from PT is actually catching up to me, and maybe he will overtake me to get into P2. But I'm hoping that he is driving on the medium tire, something like that, and that he is probably counting on me going to the pits as well, which I won't be doing, because it's only a 9-lap race, and going to the pits you just lose so much time. I don't think it will be really worth it for me, and that even if I'm able to do some nice decent laps on the hard tire, even if I'm a bit slower and I get overtaken like this, I believe that after the pits I will end up really far away in front and that I will end up winning the race if these guys go to the pits. But if they are doing these faster lap times with the hard tires, then it's quite surprising on their driving skill level and the quality of their setup as well. The settings that I am using for the force feedback are a bit different and maybe a bit more realistic right now, especially for the sensitivity of the rotation on the steering wheel, and I'm going to leave those settings at the end of the video in case you want to check them out. Don't leave the video too early before the race ends or anything, because you'll find those settings as the outro of this video. Sometimes I look at the segment scores to see how well I'm driving in one section compared to the other. Sometimes that kind of information can be useful as you are getting some sort of grades for your driving technique. But remember that if you have contact or if you go off track, you will get a very low segment score, and therefore it's like the segment score is null because you didn't drive in the proper way that you are supposed to do inside the track limits. The guy in P1 seems to be pulling away pretty quickly and he's really far ahead. I'm starting to worry that maybe I won't be able to win the race because he's just almost 10 seconds far away from me now. So he was able to increase his distance, but the guy in P2, I'm pretty confident that I will be able to overtake him if I really learn to drive better on the track with this car, or just if it goes to the pits and I just don't go to the pits, which will be my strategy for this race. I don't know if the guys in Forza for the online servers for this race they accelerated the time, but it's really nice to see the sunset going down and the graphics aren't looking too bad. Ever since one of the few last patches, I was able to turn off temporal anti-aliasing, and because of that the game now looks much better than what it was looking before. I also had to increase a little bit the resolution sampling, so even though I am playing at 1080p, in reality I went to the options where I have the resolution sample increased into 130%, maybe 125%, and that increases a bit of the visual quality, especially far away, and it removes some of the more jagged edges. It gives me some feeling like I have a bit more aliasing. And the guy in P1 went to the pits, and now I'm overtaking him while he is in the pits. Now I am in P2 and the guy in front of me went from P2 to P1. I'm not sure if this guy is going to pit or not. And the guy that went to the pits even quit the race. Maybe he got angry because he noticed that he was not going to win or even finish the race in such a good position as he thought. Had a bit of a weird, unexpected freeze or glitch there. Sometimes Forza still has its own bugs and gremlins. At the start of the race, someone was also having some trouble with the start. I think someone went into the wall right at the start-finish line. But Forza in this last year has come a long way and it's pretty different than what was released. It has been upgraded and they keep doing new content, upgrading, getting patches, adding cars, and trying to fix bugs and iron out some of the issues. I still think that the Forza Motorsport still has memory leaks regarding graphical settings or some of the textures in the game, so sometimes after one race or two you actually need to exit Forza Motorsport, because if you keep playing you end up backing up too much video RAM and it will strain the graphics card pretty hard if you don't reset every couple races. But other than that, it's not as bad as it used to be. Even though the graphics are not the best, especially for such a modern game, these clouds and these skies that we can see right now are very different from the skies and clouds that the game had when it was released. And that was one of the reasons that after a few months of the release, when Forza Motorsport went on a big sale, I ended up getting it because I noticed that it was getting upgraded and things were changing for the better. Sadly, it was a little bit late at night, and you can see in the overlay I didn't have much light when I was recording my own steering wheel and my personal camera of my rig, but you can still see the movements with my steering wheel and compare the real-life steering wheel with the movements that the car is displaying on the screen. Right now I'm thinking that maybe the guy in front of me will not pit, and that P2 will be the best position that I will be able to get this race, and I'm already happy with that because it's my first race ever with this car, and so to be able to just jump in with a car that many other people have been driving before during these last weeks since the patch has been online, and I just jump in and get this kind of performance. It's not too bad, but it's a bit far from perfect. I can notice that I'm not sure which gear to use on some of the corners, and I'm still experimenting a bit and trying out new things to figure out how to get around the track faster. And I just noticed one car entering the pits, and it's actually the guy in P1, so the guy in P1 ended up being faster, maybe because he was on a different strategy or on a different tire, and right now he's falling behind quite hard because the pits are a bit long. At this moment I'm thinking that my only worry is with the Jinja Ninja, the guy that is driving in P2, even though he is like 3 seconds behind me. If I do any big mistake or I spin the car, that can be enough to make me lose the race, so I need to be consistent and careful. I need to do my best to avoid getting overtaken or losing the position to him. At this moment I'm worried that he might not be pitting because we are already close to the last 2 laps of the race, and the ideal pit should have been closer to the middle of the race. If someone is driving on a medium tire or even on a soft tire, maybe we'll need to pit even earlier. Right now I'm struggling a bit with the rear tires. The tires are starting to get worn out, and the last 2 laps are going to be very challenging, so I need to be mindful of that, and that I cannot overstep and try to overdrive the car and end up binning it because I didn't have enough grip on these worn out hard tires. because of the pretty decent driving in some parts of the track where I'm getting maximum segment score, I'm actually leveling up the car a lot while doing this first race, which is always nice because you really need to level up the cars in Forza Motorsport, and that will provide discounts with the brands and will provide you the ability to add better parts, equip better parts, and also do better tuning on the car if you wish to do so. Right now the guy in P2 is just 2 seconds behind me and it just went into the pits. His gap is growing quite fast right now, and if he goes to the pits, he's going to be getting out of the pits quite far back down the line, and I think probably I'll have a huge advantage over him and over whoever gets to be in P2. So the guy that's in P2 right now is 15 seconds behind me, and I'm thinking that there is no way that the guy that is 15 seconds behind me will be able to overtake me in 1.5 lap. We are on the 8th lap of a 9-lap race, and I'm already almost at the middle of the lap. So I'm thinking that if I don't do any mistake and if I don't push the car too hard, I need to be a bit more conservative with my throttle inputs and the braking as well to avoid locking up, and just have a bit of care with the car, trying to keep the car stable, but I'll be probably able to get an easy win right now. So the strategy panned out really well. I wasn't sure if this was going to work, but because it was my first time doing this race, I thought about going into a more conservative approach and avoid going into the pits, because it was a short race. I do miss having cruise shift integration into Forza Motorsport like I have in almost every other racing game or sim title that I have. So cruise shift is this app that will have a race engineer talking to you, and he will give you information if you have a car behind or side by side. It tells you if you have a car on the left, works as a spotter, and as well as giving you information about the race, like telling you how many seconds behind is the guy that's behind you, stuff like that. He will say if your sector times are faster or slower than the fastest lap of the race. So it's a pretty neat and useful app to have, because you have a race engineer talking in your ear and giving you lots of useful information and status about what's going on in the race. Right now I'm very surprised with the driving that I'm able to pull off here, or maybe I was able to just get a very nice setup for this specific track. I did tweak a bit with the camber and the tire pressures, looking at the telemetry, trying to figure out how to maximize the contact patch for this race, and I'm pretty happy with the results, because even though I'm struggling a little bit, I'm able to pull a 20-second lead, more than 20 seconds right now. And here I ended up sliding a bit with the rear tires. I almost spun, but so I was able to keep the car pointing in the right direction, and that was the most important thing to keep me going. This is the last lap. I'm surviving some really bad and nasty mistakes, but I'm still pulling a 20-second lead on everyone else behind me. I'm very close to 5000 skill rating in Forza Motorsport, and I think I also have a very good safety rating, but for some reason, or maybe the matchmaking, had a little bit of trouble finding people of my rating, or the people in this race. are having trouble dealing with this car and learning how to use this car. So I finished the race in P1. I was surprised after so much time without coming back into Forza Motorsport, I was able to showcase such a dominant performance and win this race by such a huge margin. I really enjoyed the Nascar class. The cars are pretty unique and different to drive. They are very powerful, and because of that they are very fun to drive. You are always on the edge, always careful with the rear tires and careful because you can spin them easily, but it's a lot of fun to drive these cars. I hope you guys have enjoyed this race. Don't forget to leave your likes, comments and subscribe to the channel for more content. Thank you very much, have a great day and see you on the racetrack.